Hi, everyone, and welcome to another book corner. Like everything exciting happening in, let's be honest, my friends, anything happening in life, we're having all sorts of technical difficulties. What can I say? But I am your host, DC Gomez, and I'm coming to you with a brand new author for an amazing show. Remember, I am your author. I am the author of the Intern Diary. So I am getting ready to celebrate a brand new release, and I can't wait to get you started on that. But before we get started, I have the fabulous and amazing friend of mine who's coming to talk to us about this incredible new series. So how about we bring her on? And let's get started. So let's see if we can technically get us through step one in the world domination plan. Hi, darling. How are you?
It's been fun. We're already 7 minutes into it, and we are just now doing it. Anyway, as always
Hi.
with you, it's an adventure. Thank you for having me on.
It is absolutely an adventure, my friends, and what can I say? It's going to be a fabulous show. So we're going to start off and get us all situated. Welcome to the Book Corner, honey. It is all about
Thank you.
brand new releases. And let's be honest, you are the woman with the talent. You got tons of stuff going on. I always think I multitask. No, no, no. Sometimes, let's be honest, you beat me in anything when it comes to doing a lot of stuff at once. So, for everybody watching, remember, we are officially live here on Amazon. If you have any questions at any point in time, make sure you type it in the chat. I'll be looking down on my screen to make sure that I'm answering your questions. CJ's here to answer questions as well, so that we're going to get started. The very first thing we want to discuss, sweetie, is what is this new book you have all about? So, how about you tell us, fill us in, give us a little bit for everybody watching us.
Well, it's actually book 3 of the Sands of Time trilogy. Book 1, A Point in Time, came out on August 30th. Book 2, Race Against Time, came out on October 1st. And book 3, Out of Time, came out on the 25th of January. And I tell people the best way to describe it is Stranger Things minus the Mind Flayer stuff meets X-Men.
Okay,
So it's kids with abilities.
kids with abilities.
And mhm,
So, let's go ahead.
basically,
I want you to go ahead and give us the blurb of like
okay.
whichever. Let's start with book one because literally all these books have come out within the last 4 months of each other. So
Mhm.
we are flying through here. So I want you to give us a little blurb so people can kind of get us situated of like, okay, what is she really got going on in all
Well,
this
I'll
fun and excitement?
I'll do the overall,
That will
which will
work.
encompass all three.
That would be
Okay, so
awesome.
basically, there is Professor Noah Roth, and he has been doing genetic experiments trying to initiate this gene in babies. He's doing it under the guise of a fertility clinic. How he's doing it, though, is he's picking women with little to no family, and he's also seeding the experiments himself. So if this gene actually gets initiated, he's the father. So it's taken him about 20 or so years to finally get this initiated into 4 teens. They're the 4 that are on the covers. And in doing so, there were, um, help me, Holly and Blake, and then Deanna and Adam. So there are 2 nurses in the nursery who start to realize that the mothers are dying with the ones who have this gene. They're kind of supposedly dying of natural causes. And they know that Professor Noah Roth is pretty sadistic. He's evil guy. And they know that these kids are going to be growing up as lab rats. So Ben and her name is Grace at the start. Later it turns into Hope. They decide that they can save 2.
Okay.
So what they've done is they've taken Hope and, oh, or no, sorry, they're taking Holly and Blake, which are these 2. They took Holly and Blake and they're going to escape with them. And they run them from the clinic in Maine and they make it all the way to a little East Texas town called Willow Bend. And what they're doing is they're raising them. It's kind of the nature versus nurture aspect. So there's 2 that are growing up in the lab, and there's 2 that are growing up in a loving home in a small town. So when they're growing up, the 2 nurses kind of have in the back of their head that he may find them but they end up making some really good friends. One is when that the female nurse falls in love with, and that's the sheriff of the county, who is like in the best position to find out if someone is coming into the area. Meanwhile, the sheriff's secretary, Alex, has a unique past, and we'll leave it at that because I don't want to put too much out there. But at the appointed time, the professor sends Deanna and Adam after Holly and Blake to bring them back. Now, some of these gifts are anything from telekinesis to telepaths, empaths. Some of them can do a gift of persuasion where if they forcefully tell you to do something, you do it regardless of if you want to or not. Then there are some whose brain works as fast as like a computer where it's kind of kin to a precog, and they can predict with a 99.9% accuracy about what's going to happen. So the appointed...
So tell me, I'm going to cut you off because this
That's
is
fine.
absolutely intense. You have all these characters and you have a trilogy. Is this the
Yes.
last of this book or are you thinking I need to continue down this series? What are you looking at?
The trilogy is done.
Okay. So for
But
anybody
I will
watching,
be doing individual, well, sort of individual, by two,
okay.
and kind of diving deeper into the characters called the Sands of Time series later.
Okay, so there is more. So when we're looking at this entire arc, you got book one that introduced you to this entire concept that is kind of traumatizing. Let's be honest. You got little kids being used as rat experiments. Let's be honest. So you
Pretty
got
much.
book one, and I want to make sure people are watching. This is kind of fun, and then you quickly jump to. So anybody who's listening and watching, you're moving to book two very quickly, so you can get through this series very, very fun and fast. What made you decide to write this? Because this is a little bit intense, and for those who don't know, you have a tendency to write some Christian fiction, and this plays very differently what most people expect of Christian fiction.
Yes, I tell people it's not your mama's Christian fiction.
Okay, tell us
Flat
about
out.
it.
It's not, Janet Oakey's a good author, but it's nothing like that.
Okay,
I'm an indie author because I don't fit the general template that a traditional Christian publishing company wants it to look at. I'm more of a realistic Christian. Things happen, our characters fall flat on their face. In this series, there's a youth. Sorry, I'm getting a double feedback, and it's kind of frustrating. But there's a youth group that comes into play, and they're going to help Holly and Blake. And in doing so, that's where the Christianity comes into play, because actually one of the nurses is Christian and one is not.
okay,
And so that's how it comes in. But they find out in Race Against Time that there are more kids. And they're in Maine, Wyoming, and Oregon. So then it becomes a race against time to see who's going to win. Is it going to be, it's kind of like a game of chess where there's moves and counter moves. Who's going to win? Is it going to be the teens rescuing their siblings? Or is it going to be the professor? And so things pretty much go nuclear and out of time.
so tell us, when you're creating this series, because has so many moving pieces that people can kind of follow, who were you aiming for? Like, who is this series for? Are you thinking young adults? Are you thinking adults? Who were you writing this for?
Honestly, young adults and up.
Okay.
And that's generally where my books fit. They're not YA, they're not NA, they're not adult, they're kind of anything on that in between.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of parents who go through and they will read them and give them to their teens because they open up conversations. I'm not afraid to touch a lot of subjects.
That is a good thing for people to know, especially when they're wondering, like, this is an entire series that talks in the supernatural world, but yet it has very relatable topics. Because the question comes back, what does the professor want to do with these kids? What is he creating these kids for? And can you tell
His
us?
own army.
Ooh, that's a little intense.
That makes him the most powerful man on the planet.
He has the kids. They're his kids. He can control them. Here we go.
And nobody can take him. They are legally his because he seeded the experiments.
That is so scary in so many different
Yeah,
ways.
yeah. So it's like someone goes, well, when I originally came up with the idea of a Christian sci-fi, they're like, is that even possible? Is the first question. And I said, I am a sci-fi geek and I am a Christian.
Okay.
Both are at my core. So I decided to marry the two. And I'm like, Christian sci-fi geek kids need books too.
That is very true.
So,
That is very, very true. It's an entire population
mhm,
that wants really good books that they can engage in and
mhm.
not something that is just a little bit watered down. So I
Yeah,
love
no,
that fact.
I don't water it down. Now, sex is dealt with in a clean way,
Okay.
but there is some violence in it. But no more violent than you've seen on television.
So you're looking at a very G rating if people were looking for that as well.
PG-13 regarding the violence.
Okay, that's good to know. That's kind of a really
Hmm.
good set for people to kind of think about it. Like, what is it that they can expect from these books?
Yep.
So, if you're joining us at Amazon Live, remember, my friends, you can come ahead and jump in the chat, ask us the questions, ask the fabulous CJ a question, and we can kind of go from there. That's why we're here for. So, you write in multiple genres. So, I know
Hmm.
this is new series and is here, and the new book just came out, but
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about it. What is the brand? Because you have an entire brand that just crosses different areas. What else do you write in? Let's just talk about it.
Well, my tagline is "Why the stories are fiction, the journey is real."
I like that.
And when you become an author, you generally want to write the book that you want to read. And I couldn't find any that I wanted to read. Some were close, like Frank Peretti's This Present Darkness type books. And that's the inspiration for what I call the Team Angel series,
Hmm.
which is the Drink from Within, the Grace Restored series, the Holy Flame trilogy, and the Divine Legacy series. In those series, the characters actually cross over storylines. So you get another part of a different character story in a different series. So that's kind of a cool aspect to it. But in that, the spiritual realm crosses into the physical realm. So where there's dark, there's light. Where there's angels, there's demons.
I like
And the
that.
underlying group, yeah, the underlying group is angel, which is available to nurture God's eternal love. They get their assignment from Michael the Archangel, who ships them out in the world to help people. And they go all over. So,
I gotta put a little picture next to you. I know there's a
mhm,
lot of books in here because you write a lot. So, but
I
I
do.
wanted people to kind of get a really quick glimpse of what you have going, so they can
Hmm.
kind of be like, oh, that's what she's talking about. And in the
Hmm.
carousel, I think the very first book that I have highlighted for everybody looking at it, I have Strength from Within. It is literally, by the way, it is also a Christian fiction award winner because you are an
Hmm.
award winner. You have all these things that you have done and you create these fictions. What is this one about for people who are just watching in and they're going, what did I just walked into? What is this book about?
That one is unique. It's basically the premise behind it is what would you do if your town was held captive? Would you comply or would you fight back? The founding families from this town, Pinecrest, have gotten themselves in power positions, and with each progressive generation, they've gotten more and more power hungry. Till Stacy and her dad come in, Stacy has the power to back, or her dad does, and things start blowing up all over Pinecrest. The FBI comes in, all sorts of fun happens.
I
But yeah,
like the you have all these different things, and I want to show the books. I also have them in the carousel, and I want to make sure I'm not clicking too quickly because people like DC, I'm getting like literally brain freeze because you're moving very quickly through this carousel, jumping through books. So I'm kind of looking at it, and I'm thinking I have them all out of order because you're looking at Winters. So this is book 2, and I
that's
like.
part of the Grace Restored series.
So I'm kind of making sure people have it. So let's see if I have.
That one is starts with Seasons of Change, then Winter's Verdict, Spring Shadows,
Hmm.
Summer Secrets, and then Forever Fall. That one follows Katie McKenna.
Who
Hmm.
is Katie? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when I go to write the books, there are certain charities that I donate a portion of the proceeds to.
Okay.
In each one of the novels for the big people is what I explain it. I write big people books and little people books. So for the big people books, a portion of the proceeds goes to charity. In this case, for this one, it goes to a domestic violence shelter in Plano called Up Store. And so she starts off as a domestic violence survivor, and it's kind of like how her story arcs.
Okay. Where did this idea come from? Because this is very real right now and profound. And
Hmm.
sometimes a lot of writers, there are some topics we either go very dark or we don't want to touch. You know, it's kind of not in between. What made you decide to just touch domestic violence? Why this story?
I'm actually a domestic violence survivor myself, and I went through Hope Store,
Okay.
and so they helped me out a lot. So this is my way of paying them back.
I love the fact that you decided to just not just have this story, but to continue to pass it forth
Hmm.
because I think it's beautiful. Sometimes is we're afraid to tell our story or tell a
Hmm.
piece of our story because what people are going to say. You share a lot about where you're at in your journeys. How
Hmm.
did you decided to do that?
Well, what I tell people is there are parts of my real life in these different stories, but it allows me to have control over the storyline that I couldn't have over my own real life storyline. But the key to remember is I'm never going to tell you which ones are real and which ones are not.
I
But the
like that.
funny part is sometimes people are like, "Well, I know that one's not real. It does. There's no way that would happen." I'm like, "Well, actually, that one's the real one." So,
So basically, people can be guessing to figure out which one is
oh yeah,
actually going to. I like it. I like it.
yeah.
And they're still
Like
going to be guessing.
for yeah, and they kind of grow up in intensity.
Okay.
So, for example, the Holy Flame trilogy with the firefighter in the front follows
Mm,
Casey Carter.
okay.
That one's like super intense. That's like head first into the angels.
What is the
And
Army Rising series?
that one is the Divine Legacy series.
Okay.
That is a 20-year jump. And that is has the kids from the Grace Restored
Hmm.
series, the Holy Flame trilogy, and they're running the angels. And when they take over the angels, imagine college age kids, know it all, that sort of thing, going all over the world, trying to help people. Um, like I said, I'm not afraid to touch certain subjects. So, for example, in Forever Fall, you touch teen pregnancy and abortion. In the Divine Legacy series, this particular series has actually won for Best Christian Fiction Series itself. And then three of the individual books each have won an award. And that one actually has to do with sex trafficking.
These are
So, but
really deep topics. Let's be honest
mhm.
about this. How much
But they're
research did you do?
topics that need to be done
Hmm.
because, especially in Christian, they're like, well, I don't want to touch that because that might be too violent. I'm sorry, but this world is violent.
Very much so.
And if you let the world teach your kid, it's not going to turn out well. Which is why a lot of times, especially homeschool families, they'll pull these books and they'll be like, they read through it and then they pass it on to their kids. But it's not uncommon for me to get a message saying, I hate you, which I love because that means that I've hit their core. If I can get them to laugh and cry in the same book and get so mad that they have to message me, then I know I did good.
That is actually very much true. Like, if you can hit all those emotions very
Hmm.
quickly and know that people were moved by it, oh, yeah, that would definitely do it.
Hmm.
When you're looking at creating these books, do you actually sit up and say, okay, I want to touch on this subject or I want to touch on this, or does it just come to you as the book is being written?
There are two types of writers, generally speaking. There are your planners and your pantsers. The planners usually have the outline, character arcs, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, as pantsers, we sit down and we type. So, literally, the only notes I have are keeping track of the characters, what they look like. Occasionally, there may be like a scene trigger that I'll write down, but generally speaking, the characters run the show. I'm just along for the ride.
I'm a little bit pantser, but I'm very organized. So this whole writing by the seat of your pants, I'm like, yeah, that's not happen. I need a little more
No,
instructions. Like, I need
I,
to
I
know where we're going.
literally, yeah, I literally sit down, pray, and type. I type until I can't type anymore. Then I'll go through and I'll read the last chapter or two, and I'll pray and I'll keep going. And somehow it all goes together. It's kind of, I'm a strange mix of ADD and OCD. So The OCD makes sure that the character is blonde at the beginning, she's blonde at the end. Well,
That's a good thing. That's
sometimes,
a good thing.
because in the Sands of Time trilogy, one of them started blonde and ended up a redhead. But that was on purpose.
Okay, I was like, oh, wait a minute.
So, um, basically, when I'm going through it, I'm writing as if I'm watching a movie. And the ADD portion will not let me write anything boring.
That's a good thing. Let's be honest.
So,
We need fast and moving projects. You don't need something to be like, oh, 200 pages later, nothing has happened. So yes, that's
oh
kind
no,
of good.
oh no, no, they take off and keep going. I've had people say these need to be movies, and I'm like, well, as long as it's not a Michael Bay movie. But of course, a lot of things do blow up, so they may be good for a Michael Bay movie.
There would be action involved. There would be madness going on. So all of that will happen. That's awesome. That's actually really fun.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Grace Restored series has firefighting and has police and FBI. The Hall H. Fame trilogy has military and firefighting, and then the Divine Legacy series is just all over the place. And then, of course, I've already explained the Sands of Time trilogy. So there's action like everywhere.
You get a little bit of everything for everybody. And you mentioned being a big people's author and a little kid. So let's jump into that. Because when you told me you were writing a children's book, and I actually have, I was like...
She knows my writing. She was probably like, are you losing your mind?
Because you're writing a children's book. I was like, on purpose? Like, okay, I'm confused. Like, what? Like, where did this come from? Like, it was just kind of like one of those moments that you're going... Okay,
You're
do
like,
explain.
I know her. That's not going to end well.
I was confused and at the same time went, that should be interesting. And the stories are super cute.
Thank you.
So tell us about it.
Chief and Sarge, who are right back there.
Okay.
They're reading a book right now.
I like
And when I went to California with my husband to Camp Pendleton, my husband's retired Navy senior chief. He was a corpsman. And so we went to the base, and I collect monkeys. There are literally 30 to 40 monkeys throughout the entire upstairs house. Anytime we go somewhere, we pick up monkeys. And I can tell you where each one came from.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
they're all over.
That's impressive.
So, yeah, we went to the Camp Pendleton's base, and there was this little U.S. monkey with this little USMC kerchief on. Well, 20 of the 24.5 years, my husband worked with the Marines because they don't have any medical. He was their dog.
Mm-hmm.
And so we named him Sarge after the Marines. And on the way back, we went to the Grand Canyon, which is going to take place in book 3 I'm working on right now with the illustrator. I'll tell you later how it works together.
Okay.
Anyway, went to the Grand Canyon, and of course he's a naughty little monkey. He's going to get into everything, especially things that kids want to get into themselves, but they can't because they're kids. And
True.
so I would take these pictures, putting them up on Facebook, and people fell in love with Sarge. And I'm like, well, he kind of needs a balancer. So we picked kind of the opposite of a monkey would be a koala, because monkeys are high-strung, koalas are not. Outside of a sloth, I couldn't think of a more laid-back animal.
Fair enough.
So we got Chief, because my husband is retired Navy senior chief. So Chief is the koala, Sarge is the monkey. And we took them on different trips. For example, we took them on 2 cruise ships. I literally take them on trips in a little backpack. I call them little guys in the bag. If you go to my website under the Chief and Sarge page, you can see pictures of them with like some everyday people. There's pictures of them with JJ the Boss, the Memphis Street Outlaws crew. For Day at the Races, a lesson in friendship. That's where that adventure came from. But people love getting their pictures taken with them. They have their own social media. People just love them.
That is amazing. I think that is absolutely amazing. And the book, it's absolutely adorable. So you're working on book 3. Because I'm going, how much trouble can 2 little guys get? That's the next question. Because it's fun. Because this is also you and your husband. Like, this is such a cute idea. So your illustrator is fabulous. Absolutely love him. What is this new book about?
Waleed Ahmad did this one.
Okay.
And then I changed over, and it won 2 awards.
Nice. Yes.
And then I changed over illustrators to the fabulous Davy Jones for book two, A Day at the Races, a lesson in friendship. Book one is literally for those like parents and grandparents who are going to go on a cruise and then want to explain to the child what's going to happen.
I like.
That's a good way to do it. There's also a lesson of safety somewhere in the book. And then the other lesson is in the back, there are fun facts pertaining to whatever the adventure was on
Okay.
for like the older kids. So there are cruise ship facts in the back of the cruise ship one. And one family told me they use them as trivia questions at the dinner table.
That is too
So,
cute.
yeah. So with the way that David does the illustrations, I was allowed to go a little bit deeper into the characters.
Okay.
So for this one, we did A Day at the Races, a lesson in friendship. And we were able to go into the characters, and it's a pretty good lesson. You know, a lot of times kids don't like to share their friends, especially if they're close in age. This happens to Chief and Sarge. And the basic punchline and lesson learned is Sarge apologizes to Chief because he was mean. And he goes,
Aww.
"But I don't think we should share our friends." And Sarge is kind of like, "Did you miss the lesson part of this?" And he says, "No." He said, "Friends are people, they're not things. You share things, you don't share people." And so I was able to go on to that one.
I really like that. That is such a
Thank you.
nice way to put it together and to really help kids kind of going, okay, that's a really good interpretation. And one of
Well,
the
and
things
parents too.
exactly. It's great for parents because at the end of the day, we all need those talking points, and books are great for providing that safe haven for parents to be able to have these conversations without having to get personal if the kids are not ready. So I love the fact that you created this book. So,
And we're going to start book three, which has to do with differences in people and bullying.
ooh, look.
Because Chief and Sarge are two animals. You know, and some people accept that and are very curious, and some are not, including adults, not just kids.
Okay.
There are adults who are mean to kids too.
They're adults
And
who mean
so
to
that's
each other.
addressed.
Yeah, they're
So
adults who are
that's
just
addressed
mean.
in this book.
Ooh, I love it. So let's jump into it because you do several different things. You have several hats in this entire world of publishing. So you and
Oh,
your
goodness.
sister, I know, you and your sister, who are absolutely lovely, have decided to start your own publishing company.
Mhm.
So I had the privilege of actually participating. This is probably going to be second year on an anthology. So for anybody looking forward,
That's the first year.
yep. And I'm
This is
clicking
the
on
second
it.
year.
So tell us about it. When did you decided that hey, today we're going to start publishing books for other people? Because that's a huge thing. Like, how do you decide I'm going to take on this bubble of becoming a publisher? Because let's be honest, that's a lot of work.
Well, I'm good at marketing, branding, and kind of working with people one on one. Meanwhile, my sister is fabulous at, I call her the Photoshop queen, and she's great at formatting and that sort of thing, kind of taking care of those. And so she says, one day, she's like, "We can put our heads together and we can do this. Instead of paying somebody else to do this, why don't we do it?" So we initiated with just our books, which was transferring all of my Big People books over to Texas Sisters Press and all of her books, because she is a little person writer.
She is
She
indeed.
writes for little people, beginners, young readers, and middle grade.
Hmm.
That's what she does. And I usually, at that point, had taken it from ninth grade and up because I was a Big People author. Since then, I've obviously branched with Chief and Sarge. But we did it, and it turned out, not too bad. So we decided to open it up to different authors.
Okay.
And so what we do is when they come in, they get 10 hours of marketing and branding course with me.
Nice.
I make sure everything is streamlined. So when they go to launch, they know what they're doing. They've got it. And we do a live book launch for them. And if they are new, we do a short cover review to kind of get them used to the live before the main event of the book launch. So they can kind of feel more relaxed for their actual book launch. Now you mentioned these.
Yes.
This was Lydia's brainchild.
Ooh,
She wanted to do an anthology. And so what we did is we open it up to authors. We don't charge them, but we don't pay them either.
Okay, makes
They get
sense.
the books, they get the books themselves at author cost. So they can order them. And then the money comes back to us anything that's ordered like over Amazon because they're only on Amazon. But we have such a wide variety and a eclectic mix of authors, it gets fun. So we told them basically to be friendly family, holiday themed, between 3,500 and 7,500 words. And we do this each year. And we try to find various levels of authors from some that have never been published to some, like you and I who are pretty well established and have a good following. And then we do this huge book launch where everybody gets exposure to everybody else's network.
I love the fact that every time you do a book launch, it's very fun for the authors because you do bring these together. You do a live event and you have authors coming in and you're talking about it. So is it not just a combination of, hey, let me promote my books, but you're promoting other people's books, which is really, really fun. And a lot of the
Some are
times,
Texas Sisters Press authors, some are not.
and a lot of the times, some of them have never been. Like, this is their very first book ever, which I think sometimes when you're thinking about it, the author world can be a little intimidating if you're by yourself.
Yes.
Like, you need a
Yes.
network. So that makes it really, really fun and exciting just to see people kind of get together and cheer everybody on, which I think is beautiful.
For the most part, and I'm going to say for the most part because there are those kind of bad apples out there. For the most part, the author world is very encouraging to other authors,
Hmm.
but it can be intimidating. So basically, I've been published since 2012. Lydia's been published since 2015. We basically took everything we would have wanted somebody to do for us, and that's what we're doing for our authors.
Aw, that is pretty
So
important
yeah.
because you guys have all these lesson learned. You got a decade worth of knowledge, believe it or not.
I know it has been a decade.
It never feels
Literally
like
this
that.
year.
Yeah, you say you're like,
No, it has been a decade this year.
because you're going, that's a decade worth of knowledge. And you put Lydia in there. You add another 7 years worth of information of lessons and trials. You've been traditionally published. You have been, independently published. What works, what doesn't work. And then you try to pass this knowledge on to people and kind of give them an idea. And I'm looking down to see if we have any messages, any questions in the chat. But those are the things that people always wonder. How do I get started? Like, where do I start? How do I do this? So for a person who's been in both sides, you've been at the author, now you've been the publisher. What advice would you give an author who's trying to figure out how to start?
Well, number one, writing is the easiest part of it.
It is.
Whether you are traditionally published, small press published, or indie published, you have to do the marketing. And that's why, like, one of our pages is what we do and what we don't do. What we don't do is we are not your marketing company. And they know ahead of time. And so what we do is we try to help you and guide you. But it's in your hands what it looks like. It's your journey. You have final say. Like, our authors keep full copyrights of their works, the cover, everything, except for the ISBN, because that's tied to Texas Sisters Press.
I love the fact that you kind of make them understand that this is your journey. Like, nobody's going to walk it for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. And there is a huge difference between a publishing company and a publicist. And sometimes people want to mush them together. I'm like, they're not the same. They're very, very, and their roles are very, very different. So how do you...
most publishing companies do not take their people through like a marketing branding course. And I give them about 10 hours. And then I got to charge them. But for the most part, most of them get them within like 5 or 6. But we're always available to our authors. We look at them, we look after them like family.
It's a good way to see it. And it makes that transition into this world that can be quite intimidating. It can be quite overwhelming, a little easier, and a lot less terrifying.
Definitely.
So, for our viewers, I have been slowly clicking back through the carousel without trying to give you guys whiplash because I did it first and I'm like, I was like, I might want to slow that down. But one of the things I wanted to make sure you guys knew is the fabulous Miss CJ has been actually an Inside the Minds of author. So she has been on the podcast. I clicked the link right now. So if you're interested in hearing her entire interview, she does have a reading for us and during the podcast, so you guys can check it out. And she goes a little bit more into in depth into what that journey is all about. Today, we definitely wanted to feature your new book, by the way. Cheers and congratulations
Thank you.
on this new release, and hopefully you will get a day to sleep. Or are you ready back to writing the next one? What does the schedule look like?
I am in the middle of writing the next one. It is called, I'm not going to tell you what it's called because I don't want someone to steal the title. I'm very protective of my work. I'm one of those that do not do like beta readers or anything like that. There's a very limited list who actually see it, but that includes my copy and content editor and my husband and me. We're the only ones that see the book before it's published. That's kind of how I roll.
Sense.
But it's where a firefighter falls in love with an arsonist.
Ooh. Okay.
So I like the moral dilemma.
There's several dilemmas in that master plan, and you're going, which one will win? Because you always want to cheer for love, and you want love to be the victorious, and you want all these things to happen. But at the same time, it's like that goes against all your principles, dude. Like, how are you going to survive? Or he or she might be having some
But
conflict.
it was the she. She's the arsonist, he's the fire marshal. How did she get there, and what is her journey? If I can get you to understand her and her perspective, and actually like her despite her being kind of the bad guy,
Being the dangerous one.
yeah, then I've allowed you to see the perspective that you may not have otherwise thought of.
I have a question for you, and this might be something you're going, Which one is your favorite genre to write? Because you write in multiple ones of them. Which one is the one that you feel I'm going back home with this one?
Honestly, it's just Christian fiction.
Okay.
Whether it's the supernatural, like the Team Angel series, or the sci-fi, or in this case, it's kind of a little bit more on the romance side of it.
Contemporary, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The best way I can explain this is this. I had a friend who was a mentor
Okay.
when I first started writing. And I was in the middle of my second series, the Holy Flame Trilogy. And she came to me and she said, I am a romance author. She said, but I want to write something kind of more paranormal. And she's like, do I change my author name? I said, why would you change your author name? She's like, well, because my readers are used to knowing that if they pick up this book, that it's going to be romance. I said, but you'd have to start all over.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, you don't pigeonhole an actor to do one kind of acting genre. You know, when they're more versatile, you appreciate them more because you can see them in different lights. That's the same thing with an author. Why would it not be different?
Usually, the only times that I think people say it, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, is if you're going from one extreme to another. Like, if your entire group has some children's books and then you decide to do erotica.
Yes.
That might be a little bit extreme.
That, yes, I can see that.
That's usually
But
the one
like-
that I'm like, you might want to think about separating those two.
Yeah.
That could be bad.
But when you're doing like multi-genre like mine, where it's big people books and little people books, or like you're crossing over from supernatural to sci-fi to romance, there's no reason to change your name.
That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
now Chief and Sarge, they have their own social media, but they are like their own entity back there. they kind of have their own goofy stuff going on. But for me, I brand myself. That's why that story is fiction, the journey is real. And that the journey is real has allowed me to do, I have 2 blogs, The Journey to Fruitfulness, which is basically our 5 acres, taking it from ground zero to fully functioning, self-sustaining. I
That's
share our joy
impressive.
successes, our mistakes, our epic fall flat on our face failures, and I do a life lesson application. So it's the journey to fruitfulness, like the fruits of the spirit is kind of a play on that. The other one I have is the Shelf Life blog, where I interview authors, I review books, I do promotions, so it kind of gives them a different flavor. But it's still all about the journey. It's the journey of the authors and that sort of thing. And then I I'm co-hosted two podcasts. One is Book World: The Great Escape, where it's mainly book topical. It's good for readers, writers, and authors. It kind of gives them insight into certain genres or certain topics that they may not quite have understood. And then the other one is the Con Hour, and that one I have fun with. That's with the Comic Cons, which at the cons have been like chomping at the bit for this series. But they know me and know well enough that they need to wait for the entire series to be out or they're going to be hating me till the next one comes out.
Ooh.
So now that they're all three out, I will probably sell a whole lot more.
We do have readers that actually need the whole series. I have actually learned
Mm-hmm.
that it's something that they enjoy. While they might want to have one book, they really prefer the whole thing. So it kind of, you have a little bit for everybody that I love.
Yeah, and I've had some homeschooling moms saying, I'm glad we were on a break because I was reading until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I've had teens come to me when I was a youth leader and say, I threw your book across the room because I didn't have the next one.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
I love the fact that you have such an intense reaction for books. It's
I
like,
do.
oh,
I love it.
it's like, come down.
People
It'll be
are
okay.
They're like, do you drink your Dr. Pepper? Because I don't drink coffee. Do you drink your Dr. Pepper with Satan in the morning and plan this stuff out? I'm like, no.
So dramatic. Oh my God.
I know. I'm like, no. Did you sit there and go evil? Ha 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 ha. What am I going to do to my characters today?
Most people truly believe that writers do that. I was like, we're not that bad.
Not
Maybe a
that
little bit.
bad, but
Maybe a little.
I've had characters where I've initially, I don't think that's a word, initially wanted them for just for this one book, and they're like, oh, no, sister, I'm going to keep going, and you're going to keep me in here. And I've done it.
Not a bad thing at all. So, sweetie, I can talk to you for hours, and I know we had all sorts of technical issues, but we got them fixed, so that's all that matters. So I'm watching the chat. Unless viewers, you guys have any questions, anything you guys want to ask before we go, I will let the fabulous Miss CJ leave us, primarily because you got more work to do. Let's be honest, you got massive amounts of books that you got put together and all that fun stuff. Do you have any closing comments for us before we go?
One of them would be you can find all of my stuff and everything that I do on CJ Peterson Writes. That's CJPetersonWrites.com. I'm very accessible. You
Awesome.
can email me and I will do it. I have a bi-weekly newsletter that comes out every other Friday. Feel free to sign up for that. I don't spam unless you've signed up for the blog notifications, which is every Friday. You will only hear from me every other week. That's it. I keep that. And I wanted to say thank you for having me on.
Aww. So what is your Amazon page before we leave us? What is that? Where can people find you here on Amazon?
Oh, gosh. I think it's CJ Peterson.
Okay, perfect. So if you guys go under amazon.com/author, then do /CJ Peterson.
CJ Peterson.
Then you'll be able to find all her entire collections, over 15 books that would keep you turning pages, would keep you excited.
17 novels.
Okay.
2 children's books, and I'm in 3 anthologies.
Ooh. So my friends, you're going to have enough material to keep you busy for definitely a couple months. So
at least until the next book comes out.
That is very true. When is that one coming out?
Probably end of August, beginning of September.
That's not that far, everybody. Chop chop. So my friends, thank you so much for joining us. It's always such a pleasure to have you guys here at the Book Corner. Remember, sweetie, thank you for having me. It's been so much fun for you to join us and put up with all my technical difficulties.
Live, it happens.
It happens. It's so much more fun. And for everybody, remember, we are going to go back live next Wednesday, 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. So make sure you join us. We have a brand new author that has a new release that you're not going to want to miss. I know. So it's all new books, all new authors, all sorts of fun. I mean, we'll see you guys again. Bye, guys.